What's the safest way to approach a brand new object, an object you've never jumped before, you've never jumped this type of object before, and after doing a little bit of research, talking around, getting some beta, you come to find that at some point, there's been a fatality on it. The easiest thing you can really do is just not jump it at all. If this is how you're going to decide which objects to jump, you're probably going to have a hard time finding any objects. Chances are, if the object's been around long enough and someone's jumped it, somebody's been either seriously injured or killed on it at some point in time. The most we can do is analyze the situation and try and learn from it to better prepare ourselves every time we're doing a base jump. We'll talk about it a little bit. Let's get into it. So I'm pretty sure I'm not alone when, you're on your course to becoming a base jumper, you're looking at all these objects all over your area, and you think, I could jump off that, but I'll probably die, but, maybe I could jump off of it. And then when time comes around and you start actually base jumping, you kind of retract a little bit, or at least hopefully you do. Some people don't, and they go all out, and they're some of the craziest base jumpers I've met. I definitely got humbled after my base jumping course. It's very different when you're on the exit point. You have a parachute strapped to your back and, you're the only one that's looking out for yourself. I definitely got a big taste of this when the days leading up to my base course, I was looking at all the cliffs that all the local guys jump around Arizona. And I was like, God, I can't wait to jump off that, or God, I'm gonna jump off that the moment I get back from Twin Falls. But when I got back, things changed quite a bit. So I got back from my course on like a Saturday. The very next day, I was planning to do my first base jump back here in Arizona. The one that I had my eye on was Camelback, right smack in the middle of Phoenix. It's about 280 feet. It's probably the most jumped cliff in Arizona. It's completely legal to jump there almost the entirety of the year. It's closed for a good portion of the spring for bald eagle nesting. But the day I got back on Sunday was basically the tail end of the Arizona Base Boogie. There's tons of people out there. There was Tristan with the 22 Jumps Project. It's pretty cool. He raises awareness for the 22 veterans that basically take their own lives every day. So there was a big crowd out there, and I was super nervous. Showed up with two of my buddies. Both of them had jumped Camelback before. Get out there, I'm pretty confident. We hike to the top, I gear up, getting ready to go. Both my buddies go, and then I'm just frozen. Don't know why. There was a multitude of things going on. It was the first object getting back. I hadn't done a cliff yet. Cliffs seemed like not a big deal before my course, and then after going through my course, I was like, really hesitant. Definitely put me into perspective that I didn't know what I was doing still, very inexperienced. So I was thinking about that. I was still using the loaner rig that they actually gave me. I was jumping my canopy, but the rig that I was using was a loaner rig, so it wasn't even my gear. And then at the LZ, over where everybody was landing, there's probably 15, 30 people. There's tons of people there, so I'm like, well, I don't want to, mess up and then look like an idiot. So I realized I had all these kind of different, pressures and stressors that were affecting me. And typically when you have different kinds of stressors doing anything that's, very physical, you start getting in your head and you start trying to micromanage what you're doing as opposed to seeing the big picture in things. I remember when I was younger riding BMX or anything else, that when you start kind of looking at the micro details in anything, you start overthinking it and you start trying to manually do all the little movements that you kind of just habitually will naturally do if you're looking at the big picture. You'll get into a mindset where you're overthinking it and you're trying to do too much to make, the action happen.
Don't do anything. The less you do, the more you do. Let's see it pop up. Pop it up. That's not it at all. Do less. Get down. Well, you gotta do more than that.
That's kind of the difference between rational fear and an irrational fear, or healthy fear and unhealthy fear. Healthy fear is, you're about to jump off a cliff. It's very dangerous. That's very obvious. You need to have that fear so that you stay sharp and you know what you're doing. The unhealthy fear is having all these things going on behind the scenes that don't really tend to what you're doing at the moment. You gotta pay bills, all these other things that are going on that are, just kind of distracting your mind. They're making you have to force your attention into what you're doing. And you don't want that. I've noticed it affects my body position when I'm exiting. It'll make me stiff, it makes you rigid. It's kind of like if you're dancing, if you're uncomfortable in the situation, you're gonna look really rigid and stiff and not be fluid in what you're doing. If you're comfortable, you're gonna be all over the dance floor, having a great time. So they kind of are one and the same. I started realizing this, and I gotta thank base jumping in a lot of ways because it's put me in tune with why I'm making the decisions I'm making and what's influencing the way I'm feeling. So I ended up walking down. I was just like, I'm not ready to do this. Walked down. Everyone was super supportive and really cool about it. So I was like, it felt good. Felt good to actually, kind of overcome that and kind of swallow my pride in a sense. But I ended up getting some sweet videos and pictures that day. Got to talk to some of the local guys, which was pretty cool. But I still had this burning desire to get my first object back home on my home turf in a lot of ways. So the next safest thing to jump after a bridge is an antenna. And there's antennas all over the US. There's basically almost two categories of antennas. There's antennas with guy wires and antennas that are freestanding. Guy wires we see all over the place. You can break these down into even more subcategories, FM antennas, AM antennas, depending on how they're charged and what, electromagnetic frequencies are radiating off of them. Some are very dangerous because of that reason. Some are, less dangerous.
Сильно?
Так нагрівається, ох, бачить. А знаєш почему? А я не знаю.
The most popular ones amongst base jumpers are the AT&T longline antennas. These antennas are actually decommissioned antennas from kind of the later part of the 20th century, around the Cold War. They were actually built and designed to resist EMP blasts and, potential war or nuclear holocaust in some regards, where we still had a communication wheelhouse to where we could communicate across the country in the event that some nuclear holocaust happens. After the Cold War, we didn't really have as much of a risk to have these, reinforced communication devices. They decommissioned them and they actually started selling them off. I remember another base jumper telling me that in the early 2000s, some of them were going on sale for like $10,000, $20,000. So some of the older generations could have bought them, let everybody jump on them, but we decided not to for some reason. And these days, they get scooped up by local cellular services. In a lot of cases, they're just kind of freestanding and they're not being used at all. So the antenna that I chose, it was gonna be both my first antenna and my first object back home. I wanted to find somebody that had jumped it prior, somebody that had a lot of experience jumping it, and somebody that could just give me the lowdown on, what to watch out for and how to be safe in the area, the hazards, and everything else. So a good buddy of mine who actually did his base jumping course about 8 months prior, he's jumped it basically 2 or 3 times a week since he got back from his course. So he's, been around the block a little bit on this particular antenna. So, I kind of trusted his word and, he's the one who actually took me out to this antenna for the first time. So we get out there, we get there basically before sunlight, in the middle of nowhere. All these longline antennas are about 280 feet or so. Some are like maybe 300. Some of them will have like little attachment points. Some still have horns on them that, used to at one point radiate different kinds of frequencies off, but a lot of them are stripped down, so they're, pretty safe to jump without roasting yourself. So right when I got there, I started analyzing, all the different kind of hazards that are in the area. One is the power lines that are directly south of the antenna. Second is the chain link fence perimeter around the antenna, which has razor wire on it. It's not, might not be lethal, but you can definitely tear up your canopy, tear up your arm, and it's not gonna be fun to land on no matter what. The third is actually almost, you barely see it. It's basically 2 poles that have power lines on it right off the southeast corner. And these north to south power lines are where this poor guy went in on about, 13 years ago. This, particular event definitely drew a lot of attention to this antenna at the time, and still very well known that it is a base jumpable object. So he exited from the southwest corner of the antenna, and these lines stretch north to south on the southeast corner of the antenna. Apparently when he jumped off, he had a 90 left, and he was facing straight towards the power lines. The guys that were with him weren't sure what happened if he had line twists, but about 4 seconds after canopy opening, he crashed and he was electrocuted. The thing about base canopies and base gear is they're almost entirely made out of nylon, and nylon is a very high conductor of electricity. I mean, if you think about, like a nylon blanket or a puffy jacket, you get static electricity. If you rub it on your hair, it will make your hair frizz up, and the same thing is true about canopies and, Dacron or Spectra lines. They're basically just waiting to conduct electricity. Even though this antenna is decommissioned, there was still very real charge that was running through a lot of the areas of it, so it's important to be mindful of that and understand what you're doing. So my buddy and I climb up, we get to the top, we start gearing up. I'm still using a loaner rig at this point, using my canopy, but the same loaner rig that I used at the bridge and that I walked down from Camelback with. I'm like petrified doing this because first object after the bridge definitely feels more real, and it's about, it's a little more than half the height of the bridge, so it's very low, and it feels much more low because it's all flat just all around for miles. So when approaching this antenna, I knew some guys took a 2-second delay off it. I only plan to do a go and throw, I didn't want to take any kind of delay. I wanted to get that chute open pretty much as quick as I could. So I set up on the east side of the antenna, pretty close to the lines. I wasn't fully thinking about it at the time. The winds were blowing basically left to right, so I was going right-handed handheld. I climbed over the railing. I basically set up exactly how I was, on the bridge. Standing on the edge, arms around the railing, pilot chute in my right hand, ready to go. After a good 10 seconds of heavy breathing, finally get the courage up to jump. 3, 2, 1, see ya. And I had about a 45 right. You can actually see those power lines in my GoPro video on the way down. All things considered, I probably didn't, plan this out the best way I could have. But that's how you learn. That shit was fucking wild. Like, it's almost half the height of the bridge, but it feels way lower than that. Goddamn. Doing this antenna so often, I mean, it's about an hour, you know, each way, just outside of Phoenix. You do it enough, you start kind of getting burnt out on the drive.
In order to have more fun in different things, you need to push yourself outside your comfort zone. God, the sun is so bright. Right, today, what on the menu is going to be some coffee. I don't like drinking scotch while I'm driving because it's very dangerous. It also makes it hard for me to count numbers and think. But the coffee is different. It gives me anxiety but makes me just as tired as I was before. And that's just how the coffee works for me now. I honestly don't even know why I drink it anymore.
And I still drink coffee. So then, still being very new, went back and jumped this antenna, you know, a good handful of times. I think now I have about 9 jumps off this antenna. I figured it was a good way to kind of warm myself and build my comfort level up quite a bit before I moved on to any cliffs or anything, you know, a little more out of the ordinary. Okay. This is a little bit sketch. Yeah, buddy. And then actually one of these jumps, I wanted to get a solo off it, you know, with nobody there, you know, anytime you're doing a solo, you want to text somebody and make sure you let them know, like before you're exiting and after you're done exiting, just to be sure you're being safe in case you get injured or, you know, worse. I kind of cheated a little bit. I had some pretty sweet ground crew. Kind of felt bad because she was trying to get into the area of the antenna, but she wasn't able to. Started crying because she wasn't sure where I was going. She wasn't sure where I went until I actually hopped off. She probably heard the canopy opening, and then she sees me just falling out of the sky, landing my canopy on the ground. Don't really know what she would do if I was injured or knocked out or something. She might just sit there and kind of chill, maybe pant a little bit. Dogs like to pant. She liked it. She probably didn't like it. I jumped from the southwest, I've jumped from the northwest. I've used different size pilot chutes off this as well. First time I did it was with a 42. I've used 2 different kinds of ring vent 42s. I've used a 40 unvented, I've used a 46 ring vent, I've used a 48 ring vent, all with, you know, different basically immediacies and opening. But if you're trying to decide on an object to jump after you're done with your course of the bridge, an antenna, you know, might be one of your better options, just because they're a little bit more forgiving. Yeah guys, so that was my first antenna. If you guys have any questions, definitely drop a comment below. I'll answer anything I can, you know, if it's on object evaluation, pilot chute selection, delay times, or I can point you in the right direction too if I don't have the information to share with you. Yeah, hope you enjoyed. See you in the next video.